Hi everyone, it's Amy Dagerstrom, the Executive Director at the Becker County Museum. Welcome to Museum Roadshow. We're back again with Gary Thompson, owner of Tri-State Diving, and he's going to continue his stories about the things he's found under the water here in Becker County, including some bottles and some interesting remnants from Many Point Lake. So enjoy the show.
In 1990s, early 1990s, we deadheaded Many Point. And that was in the fall of the year because there was only one public access. We didn't want to tie up the access. And the scout camp let us use 10 Chiefs camp area. And we went out there and we deadheaded. We would have had not too many more. They all would have went to Japan. The Japan buyer would have bought them. We would have doubled our money. But we didn't have enough logs that fall to get. And we could only do it in that short window from when the camp shut down to when it started getting cold. As a matter of fact, we were out there and with snow flurries and everything else when we were taking them out of the water. We just brought them in the shore, kept stockpiling them in the shallow water. And then when they're in the water, they don't weigh anything. You lift them up with one hand. So you just take I would just take an ice tongue and bring them right up to the edge. They would reach down with the bucket on the truck, bring them up and stockpile them, and they stockpile them until they ended up, which I was kind of pleased at, they ended up going to Bud's Building Center. They cut them all up. And then most of them were sold to Camp Thunderbird on Lake Plantagenet up at Bemidji. And I worked for that camp for about seven summers teaching rock climbing, so I was kind of glad to see that they were the ones that bought it. They finished off the inside of their cabins and stuff with it. It's a beautiful, most beautiful white lumber you're ever going to see, that pine, because it leaches all the tannin out. And if we would have had tripled that even, then Marvin Windows would probably bought them because it's the best lumber out there that you could have for making windows and stuff too, for the outside of the windows. So we didn't have enough to do that, and we didn't go back up there and do any more. We just basically did the 10 Chiefs Bay Area. That's all we did to get that many logs out of that.
How many do you think you pulled up?
We probably ended up with close to 30 cord. And you can look at it and count the number of logs there were. The neat thing about it, I guess I could have brought it, we had an end cap of one. That far from the end, you got good lumber. And maybe 2 millimeters in at the most, you've got good lumber. So there's not much waste. So no bark, good clean lumber, so they really like that to work with. And like I said, a lot of the homes on Big Elbow were built with that. So I spent a lot of time talking with Otto about the logging up there, and I mean, he was knowledgeable. I don't know if anybody ever sat down and so it could have been, we didn't have the nice video cameras that we have nowadays. We just walk around with the small one. I took a lot of notes, and it was throughout the years, anytime I found something that was unique, I did history on it, tried to do history. Matter of fact, I just talked to somebody. We did a job in South Dakota. Had to go down to do a job for a power plant on Monday, and we stopped in a small town to gas up on the way down. And we started talking with. He had a whole bunch of artifacts in this case of Indian arrowheads, tools that there was a camp on this lake. So we're going down there next summer and do some shallow water work and see if we can't find stuff that might have been on the water that was lost during that period of time. So. So the logging stuff, like this is your stuff here. I could have brought mine in, but I knew you had it, so I didn't. This is probably my first or second most valuable find I have found. This museum doesn't even have one of these. Most museums don't. It's their branding tool. Every log has a stamp on the end of it. So when they got to the mill, they knew whose it was. Like when you got cattle going to, they had the cattle more so that when they were being rustled out, but so when they got to the mill. And today, to this day, if you find one with a brand on it, it still belongs to that company. That's the one thing that whoever logged that was, that's still his property. That's always continued on. This one happens to be an R, a slash, and an O. Okay? There's two holes right here, and they vent. So that way when they hit the end of the log, we get a better compression. So that would show up on the log better. This was licensed to the, I should bring that stuff in on it sometime, put on display for a while, because we did the history on this. A friend of mine lives down the cities, and for years I thought it was through the Department of Forestry. It's not licensed through the Department of Forestry, it was licensed through the Department of Agriculture. And so they went down there and to the society down there, and they spent a half a day, and they were able to find out everything on this, what company it was, the history of where it went through. There were five stamps that were licensed to the Otter Tail River. Okay, And this ended up through the Commonwealth Lumber Company, which was tied in with down there. Now, this was not found in the Otter Tail chain. This came out of Long Lake by Itasca. How it got there, I don't know. The reason it's like this is from here down, it was in the silt. Silt protects stuff. And that's why if we can find these buried in the silt, they're much more preserved because there's no oxygen in that silt. So this is what was out. And when I saw this and lifted out, you could actually hear me scream underwater because to find one of these is rare. And then to find one in the lake on top of that. So that is probably my first or second. And the only other thing I did, the other one I didn't bring along that was like this, I found one of the first outboard motors ever made, a 1916 Evinrude, and that's the year they started making them. That came out of Big Cormorant Lake. We were over there doing, we were looking for a canoe. Remember that one back there? They had filled it full of weeds. They were paddling out on the lake to dump the weeds out. And they had too many weeds that tipped over and went to the bottom, so we got hard to find the canoe, and we found it. It's mostly brass, and most motors they aren't too bad to bring up, but we had two guys pulling on that. And I've had it on display out at the fairground sometime for the fair. I've had it on display other places, but it's just too hard to bring in for a day like this. So, but that is some of the other things that I have found as far as probably the most valuable this and that. The weirdest, everybody say, what's the weirdest thing you found? Rubber chicken. We're diving on the east side of Big Detroit, doing some dives over there, and there was a rubber chicken on the bottom. So I should have kept that. I don't know what I ever did with it. That was kind of that's about the weirdest thing I've ever found. Bottles. This is just, I got boxes and boxes of bottles, but I just brought in some of the most unique one. This is probably one of the first ones I ever found, and it was bad inside, so I put some stuff shaking around and I broke it. But it's an 1897 Haynard whiskey bottle from Haynard, Wisconsin. So that one is quite valuable. I don't know, this is, anybody heard of Detroit, Minnesota? Okay, that's a Detroit, Minnesota, Pokegama Springs. There was two bottling companies down there, one where the Holiday Inn is and one around the corner over there where the lodge is now. Okay, and I think this one should say, this one says Diamond Bottling Works, Detroit, Minnesota. There's the other one. So those are some of the old ones. Anybody, this is one I found last year. No, this one right here is the one I found last year up in Leech Lake when we were diving, knee high. Everybody, some people are nodding their heads. Remember knee high? That kind of ages us, don't it?
Thanks for watching Museum Roadshow, everyone. Join us next week for our last installment with Gary Thompson from Tri-State Diving.